Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and we are back for an episode of G.I. Joe that is, it is right on the line of ridiculous. It's Disneyland meets G.I. Joe meets Cobra. It's called Cobra World, and I'm real excited to welcome on listener of the show and new friend, Jason Murrell. Jason, welcome to Joe on Joe.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm excited.
Oh, man, very excited to have you on. Jason, you're calling in from Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes.
How long you been in Nashville?
On and off between 93 and 99, and then consistently since 2000. So long enough to claim it.
Oh, I like that. Nashville's a cool town. I've heard very good things about it.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I've been through there once. But a friend of mine's from there, and he just always talks really glowingly of it. And you work in the healthcare industry, right?
Yeah. I've worked in healthcare for about 18 years. Healthcare technology. No one wants me to provide healthcare.
Well, maybe, but say, I feel like that's what you would do if you worked for Cobra.
Providing the healthcare?
Yeah, they'd be like, well, this is all we could get. He kind of worked around healthcare, so we're going to send him working for Cobra. I feel like that's what you would do. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's awesome, man. And how long you've been into G.I. Joe?
So I've been into G.I. Joe since 82, 83.
Oh, you're an OG.
Yeah. I remember the first 2 years, and I collected and played with G.I. Joe. I don't really like to call it collecting because at the time I wasn't considering it collecting. I was just playing with G.I. Joe.
Just playing, for sure.
Up until 1990. So at 15 is when I stopped buying G.I. Joe. A little later than most, I suppose.
Oh, we're on the exact same age plane then. Same age plane. Yep.
And so I never stopped collecting the comic book, but I did stop buying the toys. And so, I had the whole run of the comic book when it ended.
Yeah.
And at this point, while I've sold off about 30 long boxes of comics, I've kept the 5 Joe long boxes.
Yeah.
And I'm buying the trades so that I can read them to my son. Although I still get out the certain important issues, I pull out the floppy and read him the floppy.
Of course. He has to see it in its native environment. How old's your son right now?
He is 7, and I introduced him to G.I. Joe and Transformers when he was about 3.5.
Perfect.
So he has access to almost everything we have, outside of some expensive figures. And then, and he knows as much as anybody about it. He reads the collector books, like the new 3rd edition.
Oh, that book's fantastic.
Yeah. He does live videos with me. I took him to JoeCon, and he walked the floor with me. The whole 9.
That's great. So let's talk about your live videos. You do some Facebook live stuff. You primarily post in the ARA, RARAH, the Vintage Facebook group. I'm a member of that as well. Tell me about what you do on there.
It started in March 2017. I was new to the group, and I noticed a couple guys were doing live videos. It looked like fun. I do live WebExes for work, so I thought, what the hell, I can jump on and try it.
Yeah.
And at first, it was really just me showing things that I'd picked up, that I bought at a comic show or at my local shops. And then it was me and my kid playing, and it sort of evolved. And so in November, I think I missed 6 or 7 days, but I did a video every day trying to stay on topic, but I am one to tangent and go long. So usually the topic was the first 15, 20 minutes, and then everything else was me responding to people that are commenting back, or just having fun, think pieces, trying to help interact with the community, because I think that's kind of where the toys are fun, the comics are fun, but the people really make it viable for me. And I love seeing that sort of interaction and being part of it.
I agree. One of the absolute joys that I've gotten from doing this podcast is exactly what you and I are doing right now, is meeting listeners of the show and just chatting and connecting with Joe fans all over the world. When I met up in New York with Steve and Paul from the Joburg guys, That was crazy to me. I was like, what? I'm just meeting strangers, but not strangers,
Yeah.
Strangers in New York, first just out of nowhere to spend a day with, and we all got along great, and we all had this commonality of GI Joe, and it was just delightful.
I had the opportunity and the pleasure to meet them at JoeCon. I had spoken to Steven a couple times. I had taken part in their GoFundMe, and Paul was kind enough to go through the effort of one of his T-shirts. He got it printed in a child size, and it's a little bigger than a 7-year-old size. But he took the effort to make one for my son, not just like a lot of people go, no, I'm sorry, it's just adult. You can get a small,
cool.
and that's for kids. He actually took the time to get one child size. So my son wears that shirt a lot. Drew them Christmas cards.
Oh,
The whole
wow.
Watches them on YouTube by himself.
Oh my gosh.
It's really fun.
What's your son's name?
It's Alexander.
Alexander. Shout out, Alexander. Thanks for being the next generation of Joe fan. I love that.
We have to build them.
We do. And it's weird as we're talking about this. It's dawning on me like G.I. Joe right now is in that place where Star Trek was in the early 70s.
Yeah.
There was no show. It was entirely fan supported, fan led conventions, fan led groundswell. Hopefully, we can get that kind of turnaround that they were able to achieve with Star Trek. But that is where we're at right now because it is not being supported by, by the IP owners for multitude of reasons and stuff.
Sure.
But it's few and far between.
I've been sort of on record as with the new Voltron and the new She-Ra and in the early 2000s,
which are great,
Motu,
are great, by the way.
Right when Motu came out, and what was that, like 2004, 3 or 4?
Yeah.
Some of these things, like the new animation, the new style of making cartoons, and G.I. Joe was a military toy that became an adventure toy before it came back to military with us. And so in today's climate, I think turning G.I. Joe into an adventure toy and an adventure cartoon, I think would get kids on board. Because right now, like, just keeping it military only keeps us 40-year-olds on board.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've said this many times on this show. I do think that one of the issues with getting the widespread popularism of G.I. Joe is the fact that we have real people in real military harm around the world, and have for a generation. So it's hard to fetishize that with lasers and mock battles when pretty much I know very few people that don't have at least a cousin that was overseas, and it's hard to do that, I think. And so I think that what you're saying, it's a great angle to take it. I don't think we've discussed that kind of angle, but yeah, turn them into kind of an adventure team. Cobra being an opposing adventure team. Right.
Well, also, and the thing about Cobra is the term terrorist organization has a completely different connotation after 2001 than it had in 82 through 94.
Yep.
And so trying to sell it as old school terrorism just doesn't work in 2018 world. And in my opinion.
No, I think you're totally right. Yeah, I think you are absolutely correct. And I'm interested to see if they try to do that.
Well, I mean, if we're doing Snake Eyes the movie, probably not.
Yeah. Well, unless they just do a whole kung fu movie. How great would that be if they're like just straight up, here's the new Joe stuff, and it's all like just kung fu, like raid style assault kung fu stuff. They just keep it real small.
Like 70s kung fu.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
With modern techniques. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Oh my gosh, I would love that so much. So what's your modern day G.I. Joe like collection fandom look like? Do you collect the old toys? Are you still reading the comic? Like, what are you doing today from a fandom collecting perspective?
So I've never stopped collecting the comic.
Awesome.
I've collected the comic since Marvel issue 1, and admittedly, I'm very behind on the modern Larry Hama run. But I consider that fine because I'm reading it to my kid, and so when we hit 155, we'll just continue to 155 and a half.
Right.
And and I don't have to read them monthly right now because he and I will get to it together.
It's great. It's great. I love that.
And then, I still have a few of the Action Force magazine size that I have to get, and a few of the tiny digest size that I have to get. But for the most part, my G.I. Joe comic book collection is very close to done.
We might be twins. We're the same age, and our comic collection is absolutely pretty much mirrored. I have a dirty secret which I've shared on the show before, but I'll share it again because we're talking about it. I have collected G.I. Joe since not day one of the comics. I found it about 3 or 4 years into the run. So, but once I found it, I was on board. But in college, there was a period where I was like, you know what? I'm still reading comics, but I think I'm done with G.I. Joe. And I stopped. And 2 or 3 months later, it canceled. And so emotionally, I've always felt I was the reason it got canceled.
Have you gone back and bit the bullet on those prices?
Oh yeah. Well, no. I know it's funny. As soon as I got that book, I got those last books immediately as soon as it canceled. Because I was still an active comic collector, so I was aware of what was going on. I just didn't know. Obviously, if I was aware that they were planning to cancel it in a few issues, I would have hung out. But it was, I was drinking and finding people, ladies to hang out with and things like that, and that you do in college. And I was like, I could save a couple bucks each month. And no, I immediately, like the next convention or the next effort, the next moment I had to get a back issue, I got every issue that I needed. So I've been complete since then. But that's my dirty shame. I will never not emotionally feel that it was my abandonment of G.I. Joe that caused it to get canceled.
While you were in college, I was running a ladies comic book shop. And so anytime a collection would come in, I would go through all the Joes and grab anything I didn't have. So like I was missing a couple special missions or like a yearbook or a 3D Joes, and I would grab them as they would come into the shop. They would never make it to the floor of the shop.
Oh, perfect.
And so I'd have like a pile and be like, hey, and I didn't get paid. Like I completely worked on percentage off purchase and free things.
Yeah.
But at the time I had a job and I just liked working in a comic book shop, and it was one of those things where when we'd close the comic book shop at like 7 or 8 o'clock, we would open the games shop and we would run like D&D and shit all night.
Oh, great.
And it was so it was a joy, and that helped me fill in things that you miss when your parents are too busy to take you to the comic book shop at 15.
Yeah. When you working at Golden Apple out here in LA, I see the weirdest comics come through, and that's my favorite part of working there, because just random oddball one shots, and it just falls into your lap, and you're like, oh my God, I never even knew they did this book. Okay, I'll buy this. Okay, you're giving me a paycheck. Well, here's the paycheck back, because I just want to take all these books home and read them and collect them.
One of the things that I've found very interesting is I worked in a comic book shop for like 2 years, maybe longer, and never once, not a single time, did someone come in with a toy collection.
Yeah.
But now at my local comic book shop here in Nashville, I'm going to pimp them. It's Rick's Comic City.
Oh, do it. Absolutely. That's shout out to Rick's Comic City. Absolutely, man. I love local comic shops. I love them all over the country, all over the world. I've visited them all over the world. And
Same.
I love spreading the word. There is zero rivalry, man. It's all good.
Yeah. And so I tell everyone, if you come to Nashville, this is the spot to go to.
Great.
But he gets toys coming in all the time. And I was like, I worked in a comic book shop for years and never once saw a toy. Now that's probably good for my money and space at the time. But now when I look at people, when I look at toy prices, because I don't even think I got to answer your question, but when I look at toy prices now, I'm like, man, I wish lots had come in when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But
it's so weird about that. Out here at Golden Apple, we get People do not a lot because they know generally we don't really do toys. Like we always say when we buy stuff, we always actually say like we don't really give collector prices for stuff because we're not experts. I'm not a toy expert.
Right.
So we want people to get the most bang for their buck. So don't bring them here. But if you need to get rid of them, sure, we'll give you whatever per figure and sell them at a discount. But it's always Star Wars toys. It's never GI Joe.
Yeah.
No one's ever walked in with GI Joe toys. And
Wow.
in the 5 or 6 years I've been with Golden, never, I don't recall ever anyone coming into comics, sure, but no one ever comes in with G.I. Joe toys. And I'm waiting for that. That's just, please, bring them.
Well, so when I started getting back into the toys, it started with I don't know if you've watched it, Transformers Rescue Bots.
Yeah, I've seen
It's
it. Yeah, familiar with it.
cartoon made for kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
It's
at a
very
birthday
charming.
party.
Very charming.
Yeah. I'm at a birthday party and my son, who's like three and a half, runs up with one of the figures and he was like, "Dad, this motorcycle turns into Bumblebee." And a thing clicked in my head. And so a year later, we have all the rescue bots.
Great.
I've sitting down with him watching Transformers animated, and I love the style. It was the art director designer was the same guy who did Teen Titans Go or Teen Titans.
Oh, great.
And the toys match the cartoon with articulation and style. And so I was collecting those, and quietly on the side, I was buying up the 82 line for G.I. Joe. And as he got older and more, coordinated with Transformers, he started helping me change out O-rings, and he started wanting G.I. Joe and not Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
And in March of last year, he went full on Joe. And it opened the floodgate for me because Joe has always been my favorite. I have the 63rd I Ching on my arm. I had it for 3 years before anybody even knew what it was. The first person that said, "Oh, G.I. Joe," it was 3 years after having it on my arm.
Wow.
And so now with my son being into it, I buy a lot. I buy vintage and modern, and he doesn't care about the modern. He would rather have the vintage. So I quit buying the modern. I don't have a problem with the modern. It's just if I'm gonna buy the same figure twice,
Yeah.
then I'm gonna buy a nice figure and a slightly less figure so that he has a play one and I have a display one.
Yeah.
Instead
that's
of
cool.
buying the same figure in a modern and it's gonna get thrown in a box.
Yeah. My heart is with vintage. I
All day
like
long.
I love the vintage ones so much. That era of like, and it's my era, but at the 82 to like 89, 90 era.
Yeah. When I got back into it, I didn't want anything after about 89. I thought that, 90 to 94 just wasn't my speed. And someone as a gift sent Alexander a few things, and A loved them. And so I started playing with, some 93 figures with A, and I fell in love. And so now I collect 94 happily.
Mm-hmm.
It's all basically the first 12 years. I don't, other than the weird power tech guys.
Yeah.
I love everything about it.
Yeah.
There's not a single thing I hate.
Doing this podcast, I have grown to know the characters of the last like 3-4 years because I didn't read, they were not on my radar. But I've grown to like a lot of them. Like there's some really cool designs. I think there's some very cool figures that absolutely would fit in well with the early Joes. There's some that are a little wacky, but there's some very, very cool ones.
Well, there were some in the early years that were wacky. I mean, Airtight doesn't make sense color-wise, right? But I'm not denigrating Airtight. I have a very crystal clear, visceral memory of when I got him as a kid and how I got him as a kid. And the last art commission that I received was an Airtight. And I would have shown you the book, but I have already sent it out to another artist in California, and then it's going to Portland, Oregon. So,
amazing! So you have one book with G.I. Joe commissions that you send from artist to
Yes.
artist? Oh my gosh, I'd love to see that.
So I've posted them on Twitter and Instagram, and every time I get it, I open the box live on Facebook, doing a Facebook Live, because I'm constantly sort of pimping the community of like, yes, the toys are awesome. The plastic is great, but what art do you have?
Yeah, there's
Get
so
with
much
your
more.
local artist.
Well, as long as we're talking about online, let's find you. So on Instagram, you're at Caesar Moo.
Caesar Moo.
Caesar Moo.
Yeah, and
Anything you want to share about that name, or you go in as many details as you feel comfortable?
Sure. Caesar Moo is spelled correctly, so it's CAE, not EA, SAR. And I preface that because
moo is in cow.
Yeah, moo is in cow. Yeah, it's from 1996. We had a really sort of wild, crazy weekend with too much alcohol, maybe a little bit of other things. And the mad cow disease was on TV, and when you're a little goofy, things come out. And so we had this thing, because we were where we were, we had the Babe stuffed animals from McDonald's, and somebody came over and it was on TV, and we were like, oh, that's Octavius Moo, the lactose intolerant cow god. He is the leader of the Church of the Brotherhood of the Moo. And a couple weeks after that, I'm at Denny's. It's 4 a.m. I'm sitting with a bunch of people after the clubs have closed, and I'm the only person that's not a DJ. And everybody's sharing their emails and how they got their DJ name. And somebody was like, who are you? And one of the DJs that I was friends with goes, oh, you don't know him? That's Caesar Moo. And so
DJ Caesar Moo.
So Caesar Moo has been every video game name,
like
every online video game name. It's been MySpace, Friendster, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. It has been my handle for 22 years.
I love that. It's amazing. That's fantastic. Well, so find Jason as Caesar Moo on the internet, guys. And while you're out there, go to Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and find me at Joe on Joe Pod and drop me a line. Say hello. You could send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. As of this recording, Jason, we only have 5 episodes left of the current incarnation of the show. So
Can I speak on that?
Sure.
So I've been listening to you for a few months, and I'm very new to finding Joe on podcast, right? Or Joe stuff on podcast and on YouTube, because until last year I was very much alone in the Joe world. I thought it was a dead thing. I didn't realize it was as lively as it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm very happy and lucky that I found you. But every episode you mention, hit me up. And I noticed the last couple episodes you've had friends on, which to me means that people aren't hitting you up. And so I did, right? Like I hit you up on Instagram and I was like, hey, is this for real? This is really neat. And the process has been super simple, super easy, and I appreciate it.
Oh man, thank you so much. That means a lot. And yeah, it is very easy. It's all very, very simple. We're sitting on Skype right now. It's a Sunday morning, and we're just having a chat about G.I. Joe, a real American hero. Oh, and don't forget, while you're on the internet, go to patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod. See how you can help support the show and get access to Joe on Joe Illustrated, which is this format applied to comic books. We go literally page by page and panel by panel. We talk about artists, like some of the backstories behind the books. We talk about page layouts. We talk about design of the book. It's as comprehensive a conversation about the comic book as I can have, and I got a lot of comic books, so I feel like I can have a pretty deep conversation. But I love doing that, and that actually is going to continue. So there's going to be more details on that as we get closer, but that's going to continue on past the sunset of this format of Joe on Joe. But we're not going anywhere. We're going to be around, just in a little bit of different shape.
Awesome.
And with that in mind, let's hear from our sponsor, Dreamer Comics Podcast.
Joe and Joe listeners know that I love comic books, G.I. Joe, pop culture, and my wife and dogs are pretty great too. I also love learning how people get to where they're at and where they're going. All of that comes together over at the Dreamer Comics Podcast, except for my family stuff. That'd be really weird. Omar Spahi interviews someone from the comic industry every episode, and they break down the journey that creator took to get from reading comics to creating them. Comic luminaries like Jim Valentino, Ross Ritchie, Kyle Higgins, and so many more can be found at dreamercomicspodcast.com or find him anywhere you get your podcasts. Everyone has a dream. Learn how to make yours a reality.
Sweet. Well, Jason, today we are watching Cobra World. Were you familiar with this episode?
I wasn't. I had never seen the
Good
DIC.
for you.
So I had never watched DIC until, with my son, we finished the whole Sunbow run, watched the movie, and so then I went out and I bought the first DVD and we watched that. And to be frank, he watched that. I tapered off.
Yeah.
I made it through the first 5 or 6 episodes, and I was like, "This is the beard strap Destro and the just some and Metalhead's granny." And I was just like, I can't.
Yeah, it's hard.
Process.
It's hard, and there were a few recently that were getting a little better, and this one is not one of those. This is not a great episode, Cobra World.
Yeah, I watched about 5 or 10 minutes of it while I was testing my audio and everything.
Yeah,
and I was like, you know what, I'm going to save this.
Yeah, that's probably because you really only have a couple bites at this apple. I've watched it like 3 times in prep because I kept not paying attention. Like I was sitting at my computer and just was like, I can't because we're gonna hit play on it. We're gonna talk about what's going on. I think there's too much going on, quite frankly. I think there's a scheme here that would have been a whole lot of fun for an episode, but it goes off the rails pretty quickly. So with that in mind, listeners, thank you so much for listening, and everyone get ready with your discs. Remember, this is season 2, disc 3, so of the DIC episodes, and or if you're watching it on YouTube, get ready with that hit that play button, and here we go. Got this sweet cold open. Now, what does this open remind you of? Since you said you watched it kind of halfway through.
Well, I really like. This cold open is actually better than everything that comes after it.
It's a James Bond open.
Yeah,
it is 100% a James Bond open, and I love that. And I believe they're absolutely doing it on purpose. Now it's a little crazy because it's a snow environment, and you have the desert trooper flying a plane,
sleeves,
right, with no sleeves, who is then equipped with jet skis. Or snow skis, not jet skis. Snow skis, right? But it's a James Bond adventure, and I'm watching this going like, I can't get on board with the choices of who's doing what and how they're equipped, but I absolutely adore the action there. And we'll find out. We won't spoil it right now, but we'll find out why it's so awesome. But I dig it though. You're right. It's the best thing about the episode.
And it's interesting that, Hama was in the same position as DIC, right? Here are the figures you need to use.
Yeah. But
the execution is just so much different.
Oh my God. So wildly different. So in your current collection, do you have a lot of this era?
I do. I didn't start with this era, but I do have a lot of it now. Not a lot of the vehicles because I've run out of vehicle space.
Mm-hmm.
I have. We have a lot of vehicles.
Yeah, they do take up some space. It's funny. Before we go further, Dusty was flying the Storm Eagle, and I'm not very familiar with that one, so I had to look it up. And I'm looking at the toy, and it looks cool, but it looks like a cheap one piece of plastic kind of like throwaway toy. Cobra World, written by Tony Zalewski. You know what I mean? Like this, it doesn't seem like there's like any moving parts on there that would make me interested, and maybe it's so they could make it really quick and cheap.
Yeah.
But
back to something I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And I apologize for interrupting. Something I didn't notice was that they were just in the Alps, and now they land in a theme park.
Yeah, right. Well, exactly. Like it's Cuckoo Town, but that's why it was so choreographed and awesome, is because the whole thing was a stunt show. Yep. But a stunt show being put on by the U.S. military for what reasons, I don't know. now they drop in that there's like a Big Brother program. They call him Big Buddy. So we also add the element of not only are the Joes doing a stunt show at a theme park, but then there's a Big Brother program that they're mentoring kids. And then Cobra Commander comes in and buys Cobra World, or, Fun World. Magic World, yeah. So there's like, right out of the gate, there's all these plot points that are just getting thrown at you, and I think it's just way too much.
Yeah.
Way too much.
I honestly didn't even notice some of that stuff when I was testing it earlier, because my son was freaking out that they had the version 2 Road Pig in the cartoon. The Sonic Fighters version.
Yeah, the shirtless, really looks awkward, just drawing with no shirt every time you see him, Road Pig. Yeah, it's a weird look. Also, we need to point out that this is not Hector Ramirez, because you remember, I love this bit where he puts the onion in his mask. That's awesome. It is Hector Ramirez, but it's not Hector Ramirez. They call him a different name. The kid, I forget what it is, Gutierrez or something. The kid calls him later in the scene.
They should have just kept it Hector, but I can see why they probably couldn't.
I think it's an ownership thing, yeah. Because Hector appeared also on Gem of the Holograms, and that was still owned by Sunbow. So I believe that's why they had to change it.
Wasn't he also in Transformers and Mask?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was like the character that unified all the universes.
Yeah.
Here's this.
That one eye crying.
The one eye crying is just great, and he's got this. We know it's the onion, but it looks like this goiter on the side of his face. Oh my god, yeah. So we got sick kids.
How come your breath smells like
onion? Oh, that's great. Bad breath jokes. Just delightful.
And smacking the kid in the back of the head, and nobody on camera catches that.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with Jesse.
Yeah, and like, Dusty's like, I'm sticking with Jesse. I don't trust that. Guys, it's Cobra Commander. He's wanted for many, many crimes of varying degrees of terribleness. Even if Cobra bought this legally, Cobra is an organization. Cobra Commander should not be able to show his face like this without getting arrested immediately.
They're gonna fire at the crowd.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the same level of reality as the football playing episode.
Yes.
Where
also he just shot three laser blasts at a tank, and the entire tank exploded.
Well, do you know how
powerful?
Yeah. Do you know how explosive parade bunting is? Bunting is like the most volatile thing. It's why it's used in so many parades. It's the most volatile subject known to man. These Cobra outfits are pretty great though. Like these Disney World-esque animal outfits are really, really cool. So we see the Joes interrupt this Cobra parade. They're assuming Cobra's going to attack the crowd, and it turns out no, they're actually just shooting fireworks into the sky. And boy,
the indignation!
Yeah,
it's just fireworks.
I was really hoping for murder and bloodshed and mayhem. It's not because if it bleeds, it leads. And the Cobra missile launchers are shooting off cotton candy. That's fantastic.
So I like what's happening here, because after years of a terrorist organization all over the world, 15 minutes of owning a theme park, and they're exonerated.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. It teaches you, it's bread and circuses, right? Isn't this the rule? Isn't this the lesson that we're learning today? Yes. Bread and circuses. You could do whatever you want, but here's some food and here's some entertainment, people. Here's some cotton candy and a couple of poorly decorated animal creatures, and everyone loves them. This kid turns on his big brother Dusty. Oh my God!
Just over cotton candy, and that is, it's also what we're seeing today is you're not allowed any level of mistake, no matter what your track record look like. Dusty and all these guys have such an exemplary track record. One firing on a parade float, and they're just like, well, you guys are clearly the villains.
Right? And after a lifetime of villainy, hey, guess what? Here's some subsidies. Oh my God, we love you now.
Yes.
I'm going to forget everything that you did. Oh my God, you gave me a tax break. Oh my God, you're the best. I'm gonna forget all about this. Like, this is like
Jesus.
major heel turn. So we're going to commercial break with Dusty on the outs.
Today's File Card features on the Iron Grenadier anti-gravity pod pilot, codenamed Nullifier. The only advantage of an anti-gravity pod, considering its poor energy consumption to performance ratio, is its ability to turn sharply and to stop on a dime. Acute maneuvers of this sort can be physically debilitating to anybody but a nullifier. These AGP pilots require a 6-hour weight workout every day simply to maintain their massive physique and high levels of endurance. Such training is necessary in order for them to command a vehicle that can reduce a normal man to a gelatinous pulp during the course of a simple turn. Quote, nullifiers are fed solely on a diet of high-protein gruel that looks like gray mush and tastes like wet cardboard. Their muscles are always sore and their nerves are constantly on edge from the stress. Consequently, a nullifier usually has the temperament of a rabid pit bull and is more likely to bite. This is one of those dudes that is 100% off my radar. I was not a big Iron Grenadiers guy growing up, so I was not aware of this dude. I both am enthralled with him, and then also disappointed with him, and also terrified with him. I'm disappointed because he is a very, very, very cheap looking mold. There's hardly any paint applications on him. He's all brown, and like there's no there's detail in the sculpt, but there's no detail in the paint. He's just got a few purple accents, and that's it. However, what terrifies me is this face mask helmet they got on this dude. You see his eyes, but when you have the visor down, and just the whole look of him is absolutely frightening. In a very real way. If these guys came at you on the battlefield, they would absolutely look like aliens. There's even like weird like Sanskrit like writing on their chest. You know what they look like? They look like the stormtrooper soldiers in the movie Krull, and I am being dead serious about that, guys. Imagine they're white, because I believe the guys in Krull were like stone white. That's what these dudes remind me of. Then you go to the card and you see that there have to be these like steroid freak muscle heads in order to survive the ship and everything. I think that's awesome. Like there's a lot to like there. So I'm on board. I just wish they had a better paint application. The ship is cool. I like the ship. It's kind of fun, kind of quick. Like it's a little like just enough jet to get you somewhere and fight somebody. And I gotta say, the V2, V3, and V4 nullifiers never really capture the sheer terror that I see in this first one. There's something about it that just makes it look like there's a serial killer underneath it. So, Nullifier, you musclehead Iron Grenadier pilot, we salute you.
Yeah, it's a dark time for G.I. Joe when they can't win over the hearts. A national scandal. It's so great. Now wait a minute. Duke also is like, I'm not giving Dusty the benefit of the doubt. No benefit of anything against literally your only enemy. You have one enemy in this world.
Well, and Duke is also the one, if we go back to Sunbow, who had Dusty pretend to lead like the Crazy G.I. Joe, join Cobra, and knows Dusty's heart and mind.
Oh, how amazing would this episode be if there was a reference to that? I don't think there is at all. I don't think we can even manufacture one. But if Cobra was like something like, I remember when you were a part of our team, Mr. Rudat. You know, like, that would be the best.
That's where I was really surprised that they did the Falcon Duke reference in the DIC. That surprised me to no end.
Yeah, it took them a while to get there, but you're right. When they did and imagine that, like when you're a kid and they make that connection, like that means everything.
Are they sneaking out of the Joe base?
They are. And did you see the size of the laser cutter that they used to get through that? I mean, that was like industrial. Like you could use a set of tin snips probably to get out of that fence.
And it's in the middle of the day. There's no.
Yeah, and I don't know where the rope swing. Yeah, the rope swing is out of nowhere.
Cobra base is that close to G.I. Joe base.
Yeah. No, what? Actually, let's rewind. I don't think they were breaking out of Joe base. I think that was just them sneaking into Cobra base. Yeah.
Okay.
That's actually, it's funny though.
That makes better sense.
It does, but that's actually one of the complaints I had about this episode too, is that they cut. There's a lot of jumps like that in this episode, like a lot of like, okay, we're here now, and I take that as as a sign that there's too much going on in this episode between the little kid, what we're going to learn here, Cobra's real scheme, also taking over Cobra World. You know what I mean? Like, this could have been, if Cobra literally just said, we're going to do Cobra World to win over the people, that's cool. You know, I do like that it's also because there's this extra thing that we're going to learn about. But I would have been. See this, like where they're swinging away. It's just where you just all right. I get it. Ropes, cartoon ropes go everywhere you need them to go.
Sure.
They just do. Although, and this is all really cool though in the sense that it's calling back to the opening.
Yeah.
Which I like, because so the opening they set you up that, oh, it was all staged, but now it's like, oh no, we're doing it again, but the stakes are real this time because they're real. There's real fire and there's real bad guys and there's real this, and I like that a lot from a beat perspective.
The desert guy driving a snow vehicle blew a hole in the top of the base, and then the snowboarding experts couldn't make the turn.
Yes. You're absolutely right on that. They couldn't make the turn. Usually like in a Bond movie, one or two of them would die and a couple would still continue the chase, but not in this case. None of them. None of them. That's how good G.I. Joe is. Uh-oh. So Commander's boot is kind of awesome with that big red knife on it.
Yes.
I like that detail. Although they just drew the wrong foot standing on his hand. The foot, it goes from being his right foot then his left foot immediately. But okay. Oh, look at that cloud!
I think
Dusty.
everyone.
Oh my God! That music, the music. Did you catch that? Hold on, we're going to commercial. Be right back.
Hey, listeners, if you're anything like me, all apologies to your family. I'm just kidding. It's likely that they made you this way. No, I'm talking about that I'm always looking for more G.I. Joe content, and I think I've found it. Stop what you're doing. Okay, don't stop listening to this podcast. Can't you multitask? And go to Facebook/Special Mission Force. Brian Wilkins is curating all kinds of wonderful, nostalgic G.I. Joe content, including new pics from his fantastic Instagram page at Special Mission Force. On his Instagram, he's taking photos of Joes out in the wild, in the real world, doing stuff. For me, the two things that stand out the most are his variety of characters that he takes pictures of, and like the depth of field in these pictures. It's just a wonderful job of directing focus for you. I think you really will enjoy his work. So like him on Facebook, follow him on Instagram and Twitter, and get ready for his website, specialmissionforce.com. He's a name to watch in the G.I. Joe game, so get on board now. Now back to the show.
It's like, it was like a killer clown music as he stares at the face of a killer clown. That's amazing.
I think all G.I. Joe fans should watch this. I think that it should just be like required viewing.
Yeah, I honestly, I am enjoying watching this with you more than I normally do, like rewatching a bad one. There is some fun stuff in this. And
I like that with Road Pig, they are using the 90s version of him instead of the 80s version.
Yeah.
Because Cobra Commander really doesn't look that different in this 90s version outfit than his 80s version.
He's more detailed. I actually like this version. I mean, I like the animation better in the 80s, but I like this version animated a lot though, because it's like there's more kind of like broad details on them. That's kind of fun. Yeah. The color, like the yellow pops, I think a little more in this one with all the epaulets. Is that it? The ropes and whatever those are. Yeah, that really pops for me. And you could see more of his eyes with the bigger eye holes.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I liked about the old Cobra Commander was that it could be anyone under there.
Yes, for sure.
So with the bigger eye holes, it's more expressive in eye detail, but
you're right.
You could see his eyebrow color, and there's a little bit more like it can't just be anybody.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Wow, you're swaying me against this thing that I look at. Oh my God, look at that one kid. The one kid looks like a 65-year-old man. The kid with the glasses and the black hair. Oh my God, I hope we see him again. So real quick, we need to touch on this. Cobra revealed the real reason they took over the Cobra world was because it's right next door to basically Fort Knox. So they're going to go in and they're going to steal the gold from Fort Knox through Cobra World.
Although Fort Knox is in the middle of Kentucky, not the Swiss Alps.
Yeah,
So I
well,
don't
they
know where
call
all this-
it no, it's called like Fort. It's not Fort Knox. It's called Fort Hawks or something. Fort
Oh,
something
okay.
else. Yeah. And you know what's funny? There's a movie that melts. There was a movie that did this same plot that we're gonna get to, where they and I'm trying to. It's a movie called Stolen with Nicolas Cage. When we get to this moment, remember this, guys. There's a movie called Stolen that stole the technique of this stole the technique of stealing money from this episode of G.I. Joe. I'm just
Wow.
going to throw that out there. Yeah. So, Jason, on this show, what we love to do is we love to ask our guests if you could be a member of the Joe or Cobra team. What would you be, and what would your specialty be, and we'll get a code name for you.
Yeah.
So, what are you thinking?
Because I've listened, I knew that was coming, and I threw it at my son, and he is very much like he loves G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe always wins for him,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was immediate like I'd be a laser trooper for G.I. Joe. And I was like, okay,
Great.
and then but for me, I'd be Cobra, or
Nice.
rather, I wouldn't even be Cobra. I'd be a Dreadnought.
Oh, even better.
So I'm not as crazy as a Dreadnought, but I like to travel and I like to talk in front of people, and I think being a Dreadnought would just be a lot more fun.
Fantastic. I love it. And what would your Dreadnought specialty be? Like, what would your gimmick be?
Well, I think I'd be on the buzzer end of the scale with just because Buzzer was the smartest of the group,
Yeah.
but I would have to be the one that talks for them, because like Road Pig, you don't want him in front of the crowd.
Right. So you'd be this. So and that ties in with the work that you do in your actual real working life with healthcare technology, where you're talking in front of people. So maybe you'd be the Dreadnought spokesman, because Dreadnoughts need a good PR guy. We've talked about Cobra PR and stuff. We've never got. Now, wait, real quick. Do you see what's happening here? Cobra sent in their fire vipers.
Fantastic.
Forget, I'm getting the name wrong there. And they melted down incinerators, and they melted the gold. So then it became liquid, and it came through the solid steel bars. Then they vacuumed up the liquid gold and reformed it into like gold bars. And that is the plot of the movie Stolen with Nicolas Cage, which I've seen it on like Netflix. I'm watching this going, I've seen people do this in a movie. And that was it. They like drilled through the ground and like burned it, and it just dripped through the ceiling. And then they collected the gold and moved it out in melted bits. Yeah. So
That's insane.
Yeah. So I think whoever wrote the movie Stolen was a G.I. Joe fan back in the day. Just throwing that out there.
There's also a child that is good enough and strong enough at rolling his own wheelchair that he is outrunning flak vipers.
Yes. Yeah. He
is outrunning troopers that are physically fit and trained.
And yet another element to this show of like layering on, not only do we have to have a little kid, we have to have a little kid in a wheelchair. And that, you know what I mean? Like it's you could still do the little kid and not make it like, he's also an ace in the wheelchair, and like I don't. There's so much going on here. So we need to. So you're going to be the Dreadnought PR spokesman guy. I like that a lot. Do you have an idea for a name?
That one I've struggled a little bit harder with. I don't have an exact one.
Well, I think we take Caesar Moo.
Okay.
I think we take Caesar Moo, and either it is literally just Caesar Moo, and like you do a cow pattern, like a weird cow pattern camouflage. I think that's fun.
Roger. Aye, aye. Over and out.
Or Caesar, I know Caesar's not a king, but it's kind of like being a king, right? Like it's like being like an emperor, right? How about, and Moo being a cow, how about your name is King Cow and you're a Dreadnought PR spokesman?
Perfect. It seems just ridiculous enough that I would be a 90s Dreadnought.
Yes, your name is King Cow and you're a Dreadnought PR spokesman, and you wear like you have like cow patterned camouflage and stuff. Yeah. It's great.
I actually have a real world story for that.
Okay. Share it.
when I first got the ninja tattoo on my arm, I was wearing a lot of long sleeve shirts because I work with a lot of executives, and I was at a company, um, a company leadership meeting, and I'm standing against the wall, and it's warm, so I've got my shirt rolled up so you can basically just see the bottom bar. And the chief marketing officer walks over, and in every talk he gives, he always gives the whole. He talks about the CEO of Harley Davidson, who said, "I don't consider a customer a fan until they have put the Harley Davidson symbol on their body."
Wow.
And so he comes over and he goes, "Hey, what's that on your arm?" And I immediately was like, "Ah." And so I played it off. I said, "You know how you talk about Harley Davidson?" He goes, "Yeah." And I pulled up my sleeve and I said, "You can say I'm a true fan of G.I. Joe." And he looks at me, and bleep this out if it's not appropriate.
Well,
but
just
his
use
exact words-
use a substitute word. Yeah.
Perfect. So he goes, "That's amazing. Stop covering up your effing arm."
Ha ha
And he
ha.
walked up and he got on stage and started talking to the crowd.
Oh,
And
that's
so
fantastic.
that was the last time I covered my arm up at work.
Oh my God, good for you. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think I'm gonna start exposing my Irish Chicago tramp stamp at work.
Yes.
So
That would be an
this is-
amazing tramp stamp.
So G.I. Joe wins the day. They beat Cobra and
because
Duke.
of
Yeah,
Billy in the wheelchair.
right. And Duke is just a jerk. Duke is like, you may have disobeyed orders, but you saved the day. Duke, come on. If he didn't, why do you? Man, I hate when people are like that.
That's a very uncomfortable hug.
It's really weird. This is funny though, how Cobra and the guys manage to get away. They dress as these characters from the theme park
With the missile rack on his back.
with the missile rack. Yeah, bang! Like that's just funny and stupid. Oh, Cobra Commander stepped on his own tail. That's really kind of funny. I mean, it's dumb. All of it's dumb. The other thing, really, it needs to be said again. The music is garbage.
Insane.
The music, it's garbage. It's terrible music. This whole DIC stuff. When they use the audio, like the music stings from the Sunbow stuff, it's good. But
Yeah.
like that, just cheap keyboard synthesizer, that's garbage. It's just bad. Sorry. It takes what could have been, you know what I mean? So much is defined by music, like sets the tone, it sets how you want to feel. And it's cheap music. There's no depth to it. It just feels blech.
It's I mean, it's clearly, the bottom bidder on a,
Yeah, for
which
sure.
is why they're here.
Yeah.
And I hate to crap on an artist trying their best or doing their work, but this is definitely a lower par than what we should have expected after this many years of a quality cartoon and a quality comic book with quality toy.
Yes, and let me say, no offense meant to the people did it. I really always think it goes back to budget and money.
Yeah.
I think whoever
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, I think whoever did it is most likely. I'm assuming they did that professionally. They're capable of doing better work, but they were like, hey, you have this much budget. Don't go over here. It can't be a matter of like taste, because I can't imagine anyone going like, oh yeah, that's the best we can do. It's more of, no, we only have X amount of dollars. You got to get it in one, and we don't have money for layered sound what. I don't know what is involved, but so no, I don't mean that in a crap on the quality or in the artistic quality of the artist doing it. More in the, let's put a little more budget into this stuff, guys, because it's rough to hear.
That's where I look at it and I go, I haven't looked up who the writers are. I haven't looked up who the animators are. Were they doing this as like, first, second, third year out, and they were still like junior people, and this is how they're cutting their teeth? Or are they really using veterans that just don't give a damn? Like, what's the?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a mix. I think there was, there's definitely some names. We see names that did a lot of this, But then you see that they had some good, like, honestly, this idea, I think this is a fun idea. I think if on you know, in the pitch room, whatever, if they were like, okay, here's Cobra's going to take over a theme park because they really want to get to the gold that's next door, and we could do some fun stuff. But then you get to it, and you're like, well, maybe some of the more fun stuff they didn't have the opportunity to animate it. Or at some point, someone's like, oh, let's throw some kids in there. Like, there didn't need to be kids in here at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like on Sunbow, you do this. They would have done. They did the Funhouse episode. Yeah. They did. This is like
episode.
It's such a great episode. This is different, like, motivations for the bad guys for sure, but it's kind of similar in subject matter, right? But there's no kids. It's just it's putting the adults in the situation and having them be the star of the show. And this one, you get, you know, little Billy in the wheelchair, like, saving the day, and it's like, what? Huh? But listen, I love having you on, Jason. This was delightful, man. Thank you so much. Or should I say King Cow? Thank you for being on Joe on Joe.
This has been fantastic on my end as well. I very much appreciate the opportunity to jump on, watch this episode with you, have this conversation, and hopefully, you know, over the next few weeks and months, get to know you a little better.
Oh my God, absolutely, man. This is great. I love forging these friendships, so this is dynamite. So remember, guys, find our friend King Cow, or, you know, as he goes online, Caesar Moo. Find him online, and thank you all very much for listening. We appreciate it very much. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.